Hi guys, it's Becky, and I am going to be doing a project today using some beads from the September Sam's Bead Box. This was the one that was the mid-century style, and it was curated by Neelay Patel, who is the owner of SilverSilk and More. And if you've been on my channel for a while, you'll know I love SilverSilk and I love working with it. If you're new here, it's been a while since I've done a flat mesh project, so this might be some new information for you. I grabbed some extras from their site to use with some of these beads, and I'm going to be using these gorgeous wood beads that are polished and beautiful and ready to go. So these are the beads that I'm going to be pulling out of there. And these were some of the extras that I got from Sam's Bead Shop that were coordinated to go with this bead box. And one of those is this flat mesh. There was a packet of this gold flat mesh and this pewter flat mesh. I've used the pewter in other projects before, but I think I'm going to be using the gold for this one. And if you didn't know what flat mesh is, it is extremely fine gauge wire that is colored wire that has been knitted. He knits it into a tube and then squishes it flat so that it's like a ribbon. It's like a knitted wire ribbon, or, you know, if you prefer, like a little metal scarf, a teeny tiny metal scarf. But one of the fun things about this is because of the knitting, there's very regular spaces between the knit stitches, which lends itself really well to working with seed beads and doing beading that way. And I've used it that way before. So I'm going to be using that and this tube of this bead mix that Rachel put together. And that was something that was meant to go along with that. I've also got this other tube of 11O seed beads that's this dark matte green color. And I actually got this as an extra with the Wonderland box that was, I think it was April. Was it April or was it March? It was sometime in the spring, but it was a fun one. But I thought that this would go with these colors too. So I'm going to be using those 11O seed beads, the bead mix that Rachel put together, and these 11O, the actual color is frosted olivine. And these wood beads and some flat mesh. Now to finish my flat mesh, I have some of these flat mesh crimp ends that you can buy from SilverSilk and More, and they come in different colors. I'm going to go ahead and grab these out, and they've got these little teeth inside of them. Let me, whoop. They're slippery little suckers. They've got these little teeth on the ends, so they grasp onto and they dig into the flat mesh when you put them in the jaw, and then crimp them closed with some pliers. And they have this little SilverSilk symbol. They also have these nice rounded edges, which makes them a little more comfortable for wear than some other closure options that you might have for these. And I'm just gonna real quick tell you about some of those other options for finishing them. You can, if you don't have these from Sam, you can use some, where did they go? I just had them here and I was just looking at them. Or from Neelay, and these ones are at the SilverSilk and More. There are these tiara cast crimp ends. They're tiara cast, so I'm not sure how long they'll be. I got these from Sam's Bead Shop, and they work sort of the same way, except instead of them being jaws, you've just got this opening here that you can stick your flat mesh right into and then crimp it closed. Because it's pewter, it is malleable. You probably want to make sure you get all the bits of your wire in there when you do it. It is malleable, so you can just crimp it or squish it closed with some pliers, and It works really well. I've got actually an example here is when I used the flat mesh like a chain for this necklace. I went ahead and used some of those tiara cast crimp ends like that. Or you could use some glue-in cord ends if you've got some that have a 5mm opening, like this one. It is not pewter, it is not malleable, so you can't crimp it closed, but you can put some glue in there and then stick your flat mesh and let the glue cure, and you have a nice end to your flat mesh. You could also use fold over cord ends like this. I used that for where is it? For this necklace. Some fold over cord ends. They can be a little bit rough on the edges, which is another reason why I prefer the SilverSilk one. They're my favorite way to do it, but you can use that. All you'd have to do is make sure you've got one that has a 5mm width. Put it in there and then fold over the ends, because there's a little tooth here that'll grab onto it and keep it from sliding out. And then there's also ribbon ends. And you would just put that in there. And this is a 6mm ribbon end, so the ends are wider than the flat mesh on it. And that's fine. There's different ways of finishing your flat mesh. And when we get to the end, I'll show you how I like to use these, but they are my preferred way to finish flat mesh, is with the SilverSilk findings. They fit perfectly. They have these really nicely rounded ends, which make them really comfortable to wear, and you don't have to use glue if you don't want to, or anything like that. I think my second favorite are going to be these tiara cast ones. But yeah, and I just want to show you too, like, you can use flat mesh like a regular chain in a necklace, like this one, or you can use it as a jumping off point to do like bead weaving, like I did with this. It's actually did the same thing with this one too, and this actually was selected by one of the winners for my giveaway, so I'm going to be putting this in the mail for you. And this was with the Waltz of the Flowers bead box. But again, you have uniform spacing between each of these knits, so you can do something where you've got to have uniform spacing like this. But one of the earliest ways that I was using it was doing a little bit of bead weaving along the edge of the flat mesh, and that's what I'm going to be doing today, where you do a brick stitch along the edge with some 11/0 seed beads, and then you can use that to attach dangles, to do a little bit more of bead weaving with that. And this is it's actually a convertible like bracelet, but it also will be on a necklace for multi-layers, and this one was with the Wonderland bead kit. But this is what I'm going to be showing today. And there's another one that I made with the first Sam's bead box that I got. That was the Beauty of Time one. Oh no, wait, that was the second one. Beauty of Time one that has some lentils, but I can't find it. It's around somewhere. But I'll put links to each of these tutorials that I used flat mesh with in the description, so you can see the different ways that I've used it, and maybe you can also see how hopefully I've gotten better at showing how to use this. So I am going to be using some of this SilverSilk, and it is the SilverSilk flat mesh. I'm using these gold color that came with it. I'm going to use these matte green beads as my my brick stitch edge. And then I'm going to use the bead mix to string these on as dangles. And we're going to just have them do kind of a V shape. So we're going to do shorter and then longer. And then when I get to the middle, we'll go back to shorter for each of these. And I think that that will look fantastic. And that's the plan. All right, now let me get out just a little more flat mesh than I'm going to need. And you know what? Actually, let's just cut it off after, because I'm not sure exactly how much I'm going to be bead weaving on here, but we're gonna get it figured out. Let's go. Let's do some bead weaving here. And then what I can do is I can add more brick stitch along the edges if I need more. For this, I'm going to do choker length, but that way I can make sure that it's centered, but I can do the middle part first. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do with this. So let me set these out of the way because I'm not going to need them yet. And I am going to get some of these seed beads out here. And I'm going to pull off about a wingspan's worth of this dragon thread. Now it comes in this nice gold color. You can use wildfire or fireline. I like fireline a lot with this sort of work, but it doesn't come in this gold color, and I want to use the gold color. I do believe that the wildfire comes in like a yellow or gold color. You can use that. I don't know that we need our fringe that I'm going to be making to have too much drape, so this should be fine. This does have a little more drape than this does when you go through it. It's not going to be rubbing against a lot of other beads. So as far as durability, I mean, I'm not using any bicones or anything like that, so it should be fine for that. And let me grab some thread snips for this. Now when it comes time to actually put this together, I am going to be using a wire cutter to cut my my flat mesh, and I'm going to be using my pliers to squish closed the what are they called? The crimp ends. But I'm not going to need these until later. So the first part of this is going to be my thread and a beading needle. Now you can use a regular English beading needle. That's just fine. But I am going to use a wide-eye needle because I am more comfortable with those. It's just easier for me to use. So I'm going to go ahead and get that threaded in here with this wide-eye beading needle. Let me show you how to get started on this. I'm going to do a few beads brick stitched on here, and then you guys can time travel while I work on the rest of this. You can meet me when I've got it to the length that I want it to be. But what I'm going to do here, let's get close enough that you can see what I'm doing, is you've got these different, I call them pearl bumps. But I don't know that they're actually pearl bumps. They're just where the bumps where one loop intersects with the next loop for the knitting. But I'm just going to stick my needle through one of these. Just here on the edge, like that. Actually, you want to go through two legs so that if you do that, see, that's one of the loops. And I'm going to leave myself, I guess, about 7 or 8 inches of thread on that end because I'm probably going to be adding more seed beads as I go. So to start the brick stitch, this is the only time that you would pick up 2 beads at a time. But I'm going to jump over. I'm coming through this one. I'm going to jump over this one and sew through this one over here next to it with my needle. And you can tap this to get these to sit against the edge if you want. And it will sit a lot nicer when I do this next part. Just to go up through, you've got this end that is against the flat mesh. I'm going to go up through that end and over the top of the needle. And I'm going to actually loosen that up a little bit so that I am not going around the flat mesh. My loop needed to stay on one side of the flat mesh and I did not let it do that. Alright, so this one on this end is going to be a little bit wonky until we finish it up, but for the rest of them, they're going to lay pretty flat. And the spacing, you can see the spacing for each of these ends of the flat mesh is pretty consistent with the size of an 11/0 seed bead. So I can pick up another 11/0 seed bead on my needle. You always want to pick up your seed bead before you sew through it, and then just sew through into the next space right here where you have another knit stitch right next to it. And bloop. And that is brick stitch. I'm going to do this 3 or 4 more times on camera because I haven't completed this brick stitch. I just went through the flat mesh with the bead. I haven't secured it on there by sewing back up through that bead going the other way. That's much more secure on there. So once again, I'm just adjusting where my needle is on the thread so I don't have a really long tail going through there. I'm going to pick up another 11/0 seed bead. Going to sew through this next knit stitch after the one I just finished attaching a bead to. I'm going to try and go through both legs of that stitch. You don't have to, but it's just a little more secure. You could just do one leg, but it's going to pull on the wire a little bit when you do that. Alright, so that's the first part going through, and then you sew back up that needle. What this will do is give me a nice edge of beads that I can work from when I'm attaching my fringe. I'm going to do one more, and then you guys get to time travel and I get to work on this some more. So I've grabbed my one bead, and I am going to go right into the next knit stitch right there. Come on, buddy. There you go. Be gentle with it. You don't want tangles. And then back up through from the bottom to the top that seed bead that you just attached. Like I said, this one's going to be wonky. That's fine. We'll come back and take care of it after we get the rest of this done. So I'm going to attach several of these. I think I'm going to give myself about 7 or 8 inches of this brick stitch. And when I've got that much done, then we can start working on our fringe. And another thing is that after I'm done working on the fringe, I'll also show you how we can add more thread and add more beads along the edge, because I want to make sure that I get it centered. And right now I'm not sure exactly where to start with the fringe. So I'm just going to do the part that's going to be fringed first, and then we can add stuff on the other sides. And I'm okay with, maybe cutting off a few inches of the flat mesh on the other end, because you can use little bits of it in designs, like to make some really cute earrings, which I'm probably going to do some little matching earrings with this, or using it for other reasons like that. But this is what I'm going to be doing, and I will see you guys back here after I get about 7 or 8 inches, something like that, of my brick stitch done on the edge of my flat mesh. Okay, so I have got my flat mesh with a line of seed beads brick stitched along the edge, and it's about 7.5 inches. And this will be enough room for me to be able to attach my drops to this. And then after I attach my drops, then I'll see where I'm at and make sure that they're centered, and then brick stitch back along each of the sides to get to where I want it to be the right length, and then cut off there and attach my crimp ends and a lobster clasp, or whatever I decide to use for clasp. I haven't decided yet, because this is, a multi-day project probably. So we've got it here, and I've got my thread coming out of this one seed bead here at the edge. Now, it hasn't been connected to another seed bead on this side, so it's going to be a little bit wonky when we go through, but I'm not going to be putting any of my dangles through this bead. I'm going to be putting it through probably this third one from the end here, so that's taking some of the brunt. And then when I go to add more seed beads later, that's when this will get attached, and I'll have that stability of, that's what makes the brick stitch so stable, is it's attached to whatever you're attaching it to below, and then it's attached on either side to the seed beads next to it, like that. So what I'm going to do with this one is, because I don't want to go back down into this seed bead, so I'm just going to go back down, and I'm going towards the flat mesh here into the seed bead next to it, because I just need to move my thread over a couple of seed beads. So now I'm going to have my thread and my needle coming out of this third seed bead from the end, going away from the flat mesh. So coming out of the work. And now I'm going to attach my first dangle. And for my dangle, and for all of my dangles, I'm going to be using these wooden beads. And I'm going to be using this bead mix. It's an 11-0 seed bead mix that Rachel Siegel put together for this. And I'm just going to grab beads however from here. If you were going to do the same thing and you wanted to follow along, you could do like all the same beads. I personally think some of these brown beads might look really, really great. or else some of these gold beads on their own together, or even some of these green beads. But I've got this green here, so I don't know that I would do both of these greens right next to each other. So I'm going to pick up 3 of these seed beads. I'm going to slide it down my thread, down next to my work. And now I'm going to put one of my wood beads on my needle, slide it down next to my work. It's going to be my first dangle. And now I need an anchor bead. So I'm going to pick up, and I think I want my anchor beads to all be, do I want them to all be the gold color or the green color? I don't know. How about one of these opaque green ones? So in order to anchor it, I'm going to be sewing back into the same hole that I was coming out of after picking up my bead. And that anchors my dangle and my strand. I'm going to sew back up through all 3 of these and back through this seed bead that I came out of. And now I have my first dangle. I'm going to want to move, see if these are right next to each other. I don't want them to be bumped too far. I'm going to want it to be coming out of this seed bead right here. So if I go down and up and down and up, that's not coming out of it. So perhaps what I need to do is, instead of going up through this seed bead that I came out of the first time for my spacing to work, I'm going to want to go into the seed bead next to it. So my dangles will be attached between 2 seed beads instead of coming out of one singular seed bead. So now I can go down and up and down again. So I'm coming away from the flat mesh. For this, I'm going to pick up, I think, 6 seed beads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and a wooden bead. Let's see how this dangles. I'm just estimating it and eyeballing it. When they dangle, I'd like for there to be a little bit of overlap as far as their length from the flat mesh, but not too much. So it looks like 3 seed beads height is going to be enough that it will dangle a little bit further, but not so much that it'll be dangling way over down here. So let's grab an anchor bead, and I'm going to sew back into this wood bead. And if I can manage it, all of these beads, except for the seed bead I was coming out of from the flat mesh. It's possible that you might need to adjust this. You can do that by pulling on this in order to tighten it up and get it next to there, and then pulling this again. So I'm coming out of this bead here. I'm going to want to go into the bead next to it. Make sure we're not getting caught on anything, because I think that that is perfect spacing between these two. Actually, could probably have done it one bead closer. Maybe. No, I like that spacing. I like that spacing. All right. So away, towards, and away. And I can do my next dangle. So I'm going to be adding progressively longer dangles as I go. So this one is right next to the flat mesh. This is going to be a little bit further. And this next one is going to be a little bit further than that. So I'm going to be doing that by adding 3 more beads each time I do one of these. So this was 3, this is 6. I'm going to do 9. I know I said I didn't want to do math today, but looks like that is what we are doing. All right, now I'm just skimming across the top with my needle held horizontally. That's how I can get kind of a variety of beads in a random order. So I've got 6, 7, 8, 9. That is a 10 and an 11 right there. So that is 9 beads. And 1 wooden bead. Now I'm gonna pick up my anchor bead right there. And we're just gonna sew back through here. Just gonna hold this here. Sew back through and go back up this strand through all of these beads, but not through the seed bead that's attached to the flat mesh, because that bead, because we're going to go into the bead next to it when we get there. I got to adjust and adjust. There we go. So we're coming out of this bead. So I'm going to want to go into this bead next to it. And you can see we're starting to get a bit of a slant in this direction. So I'm going to continue doing this until I have 7 of these wooden beads. And then after the 7th, I will start going progressively shorter dangles. So when I get to my 7th, I'll turn this back on and show you the next one and how it's shorter. And then I'll finish up the rest of the dangles, and I will show you how we're going to add more seed beads to the edge, and then we'll finish it up. So here we are. I have 7 of my dangles here, and you see how it makes kind of an angled line here with my beads down here at the end. What I'm going to do now that I've got 7 of these, is I want to attach these final 6 using progressively shorter strands of beads. So I've got 21 on here. So the next one that I'll do is 18, which will match this one, and I'll do that right here for this next one. And then 15, and then 12, and then 9, and then 6, and then 3. And then once I've got all that, we should have kind of a triangle shape made between the beads, and the flat mesh. And that's going to be the main focal part of this necklace. So I'm going to do that, and when I get finished, I'll show you what it looks like. And then we will add some thread over here on this end and just add some more beads on the flat mesh until we get to the end. So let me finish adding the rest of my dangles, and I will join you back here again. Boop, just like that. Looks pretty nice, huh? So what I want to do is I want to get a new piece of thread probably over here, and I want to add enough of the green seed beads. So now that I know where my middle of my necklace is, I want to add enough on either side for this to be able to fit around my neck. So probably to here on each side. And I'm going to do that off camera since I already showed you how to do the brick stitch. But before I do that, I want to show you how I'm going to end this. So this is where I ended up after I put on my last. Instead of going up into the next bead over, I just went back up into the same one. I'm just going to go down into the next bead next to it. I'm just going to turn this over too, because I want all of the rest of this to be done on the wrong side. Oop, I don't want to go through that loop. Sorry. There's a loop here, and I accidentally went through the loop with my needle, so I'm going to go back through the loop. There we go. That way when I pull this needle, it'll go all the way through. I'm going to just turn this over. This is going to be my back side. I'm going to carry my thread along by weaving in and out, because I'm going to want to tie this off. And I'm going to keep going until I get here next to one of my dangles. And there's kind of an extra thread bridge here, because we've got the thread bridge from when I first did the what is it called? The brick stitch, and then there's the extra thread bridge from where we actually made the dangle. So I'm going to sew through this thread bridge with my needle, just through the thread, looping underneath it. I'm going to try not to get this looped on any of these dangles or beads. So now that I've got a loop that I am aware of right here, I'm just going to sew through this loop that I made and pull it taut. And that's going to make kind of a half hitch knot right there. I'm going to do a second one. I go underneath the thread bridge, and then I sew through that loop that I made and pull it taut. You can barely even see it, but now that I've made that little knot, I'm going to just carry my thread a little ways away from it. Just going to go in and out of the brick stitching, and then I'm going to be cutting my thread, but I want to cut it after I come back towards my flat mesh. I don't want it to be poking out on that side when I cut it. I'm just going to cut it right here, as close as I can get to that seed bead, and that's tied off my thread. And then when I go to add thread over here on this side, I'm going to do something a little bit similar. This is the back side that I was just working on, I think. Yes, this is the back side. So what I'm going to do is a couple of stitches, or a couple, I'm calling them stitches, a couple of seed beads away from this dangle. I'm going to go into one of these seed beads with my thread. I'm going to leave a little bit of a tail. It doesn't need to be a very long tail because we're going to be cutting that off. But then I'm going to go in and out a couple of times in these seed beads. I'm going to try not to have my thread loop around those. And when I come out next to this dangle, I'm going to do the same tying off that I did with the other. Nope. Not going anywhere. I'm going to tie this here using, again, the double half-inch knot. By sewing under the thread bridge. Before I pull that taut, I go through that loop. Now I can pull it taut. Go under that thread bridge one more time. Pull that taut. And when I'm done with this, I can go back and cut that thread. But in the meantime, I can get myself in a position next to this last seed bead that had been added. I'm not being in, I'm trying to move my thread so that it's coming out of the top of this last seed bead on this row, so that I can get in a position to continue my brick stitch. So now that it's coming out of the top, I can move those out of the way and go get my brick stitch beads. I can pick up my matte seed bead, sew into my next lump here, and sew back up through this. And I can continue adding more seed beads to the edge of this until I get it to the length that I want. So I'm going to do that on this side, and then I'll also do it on this side. I probably won't need to add thread to this side because I left myself a significant amount of thread here from the beginning side. So I'm just going to use this thread to continue on this way. But once I have sufficient seed beads along the edge so that it's decorated, basically, then I will show you how to attach the flat mesh crimps, and we'll add a clasp. All right, I have the edge beaded as far as I'd like. This edge is ready for a crimp because I've gone ahead and finished off the end. I tacked down this last bead over here, and I went ahead and clipped the flat mesh with enough room left to fit into the flat mesh crimp end, and also to fold it over a little bit when we do that, and I'll show you how to do that shortly. But I've cut it off with about a centimeter between this last bead and the end that I'm doing there. But let me show you on this one, because I have not finished this one completely, how I finish off this end. And how we've got this last bead on here, and it's not tacked down like I said with the other ones. Each bead is connected to the one next to it, and that's what gives it its stability. This one doesn't have one that it's connected to. So I'm going to go down along the outside of the bead, and it's fine if this thread shows because it's going to be right next to the crimp, so nobody's going to really see it. And I'm just going to go through the flat mesh right there. I'm just going through one, it's fine, but I'm going down and along there, back up, and I'm just going to go through this twice. This is just going to tack this down, give it a little more stability. And on this one, I'm going to go back the other way. So the other one was going this way through the flat mesh. This one, I'm going to go that way through the flat mesh. And like I said, it's okay if the thread is visible because we're going to be covering that. Now I'm going to put this thread through both of these strands because I'm just going to tie a real quick little knot here on the end, going through there. Before I pull it tight, I'm going to go back through that loop, bloop, and now I can pull it tight. When you pull, you want to pull the strand, not the needle. And now that I've done that one little knot, that's all I need right there for that. Just going to weave in and out of here for a little bit to come away from the knot. And I'm going to find a convenient place to cut off my thread. I think 4 is fine. So now I can grab my snips, which, like, I just had them right here. Oh, they were underneath the thing. Grab some snips, cut that off. And any, like, fuzzy ends, you can just burn down if you need to. So now on this side, I want to make another cut with my flush cutters, just like on this side, about 1 centimeter away from the end of my needle. And I'm just gonna measure it here on my thing. Okay, so that's where I need to cut, because I have a little measuring board over there that's in centimeters. And there's often a few little wispy bits of wire attached. You can knock those off or pull them off. There we go. So now that I've got a clean end, I'm just pinching it and pulling it to flatten it out a little bit this way. I can begin the process for crimping it in one of these SilverSilk crimp ends. All right, so I'm going to want it to be facing this way. Now, I want to give it a little bit more to grab onto, and also make sure that these ends don't come undone. So to do that, I'm going to be bending my flat mesh. Now I like, for bending the flat mesh, these tweezer nose pliers a little bit more than I like my chain nose pliers. If you don't have tweezer nose pliers though, chain nose pliers will work just as well. I'm giving it a good squish here on the end, and then I'm bending it over. And this is why I like the tweezer nose pliers, is because they're very thin there, so I can just bend the flat mesh around the pliers instead of bending the pliers around the flat mesh. And then on the sides here, while I've got it pinched, I'm just tamping the edges in to give us a nice smooth edge. And now I can put my end on. All right, now I'm gonna grab my, hold on. I'm gonna stick this in here because that way I can just put that right there in the middle of that, get it lined up, and give it Good tamping down. And it is secured. All right, and just in case we missed it, I'm going to do the same thing on the other side with my guy. I got my little bits of extra wire off, and I'm ready to go. Do I have all my bits of extra wire off? I think so. I'm going to use my tweezer nose pliers just here on the end. I'm going to bend this around that way. Give it a little pinch. And use this to squish the sides so we have a nice clean edge of flat mesh to go into the pliers. I'm going to stick this in here so I'm holding it. I'm going to feed the end of my flat mesh right here into the pliers. Or so I thought. Make sure that these are facing the same way. All right. Sometimes it can be fiddly. That's fine. I'll make sure I'm facing it the right way. You see how it's right next to the thing, so you can't even tell that I had all that extra thread right there. All right. So now these ends are done. All I need now is a clasp. And I went ahead and pulled out a little lobster clasp and some oval jump rings. I like oval jump rings. And I made myself a little extender because I like having an extender on choker style necklaces. So I don't know if you guys have ever had it where you woke up and that day your neck was thicker than it usually is. I don't know. Sometimes that happens to me. Which is fine, I guess. It's normal, isn't it? Maybe it's not normal. Maybe I should talk to a doctor about it. I don't know. But I'm going to get a jump ring on this end. With these oval ones, they've got the split like on the short side of the oval, not on the long side. It just makes it harder for them to come apart on you because most of the pressure is going to be here on this curved end and not where the join is. I really appreciate that about them. I got this little pack of oval jump rings from Amazon a while ago, and today and tomorrow they're actually on sale. They're part of the Amazon Big Deal Days. So I'll put a link in the description. I also put a few links in a community post for some things that I've purchased before and that I found that are also on sale on that. So we've got this end here. And now let's go ahead and attach the other end with the extender chain, and then we'll be done with our mid-century modern seed bead and SilverSilk flat mesh choker. There we go. Scooch back a little bit so you can see the full thing. I'm very pleased that this worked out the way I wanted it to. And you can see how easy flat mesh is to work with and how it just gives you like a little bit of a nice, immediate, like polished look with that. Anyway, I hope you learned something. I hope you had fun. I will definitely link my other flat mesh projects in the description. I'll put a link to the Sam's Bead Box, to SilverSilk, and also to where I got these oval jump rings. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day. Bye.